In my way of peculiar thinking, and it oftentimes is rather peculiar, we have today a strange gospel this morning. A gospel that shows some Pharisees in a good light for the change. If you haven't really read about the Bible too much, you might not know that the Pharisees are usually the opposing body to Jesus of this group. And today, they're doing something nice for a change, it seems. Here we see them trying to warn Jesus of Herod, who is about to come out and get him. Now, if you don't know who Herod is, he's the puppet king that Rome has placed in charge of Galilee. What's more, he is the same king that beheaded John the Baptist not too many months before. But there is no doubt that Herod is one not to be fooled with. When Jesus hears the Pharisees warning him, he incredulously tells them to go tell that fox. You go tell that fox, mind you, that he is way too busy today to be worried about the likes of him. And Jesus sort of keeps on trucking. Now, a fox to our modern ears may sound a bit funny or odd, but to a Jew of that time, it was different. It was much worse. Foxes were despised creatures. They were sly. They were wild dogs, and worse, destructive pests. Being called a fox definitely would not endear Jesus to Herod. Quite the opposite. But he said it anyway, just to get the company and the people a little uptight and get Herod a little more angry, I suppose. Jesus was not going to let Herod stand in the way of his destiny. Truthfully, despite all our fear that Jesus might have been experiencing, Jesus was not to be deterred that day. But Jesus has a message for Herod beyond calling Herod a fox. The message, however, is not coded in anger or hatred, as one might expect, but in the complete fulfillment of his earthly mission. If you listen closely, you can hear the pain and anguish in Jesus' voice as he cries out, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, killing the prophets and stoning those who hate you, that sent you. How often I would have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you would not." In these few agonizing but gut-wrenching words, Jesus declares God's relentless, penetrating desire to love God's people. Despite our constant denial of God's love, Jesus fully understands his ultimate journey and will not be deterred even if it cost his very life. He is telling the Pharisees that no one, not even Herod or even his followers, no one can stand in his path. The path Jesus is on is definitely a course of painful, sacrificial love. A love Jesus realizes will seldom, if ever, be returned. There are other examples of this kind of love that I could share with you. Perhaps a Mother Teresa or a Bishop Tutu, a person who gives a stunning portrayal of suffering in the pursuit of love, despite all the very real pressures from all sides that confront and demand them to stop. Today I realize that I don't need to look too far to see that kind of example. In truth, each of us have experienced moments like this probably in our everyday life. All of us have at times demonstrated this painful type of love. All of us at times have chosen love when every rule in the book told us it wasn't worth it. Perhaps it was a time when we loved someone despite our own personal costs. A time when we loved our spouses, our children, our parents, whomever, when it really cost us something to do that. In all my churches I have served, there have been countless people that have demonstrated true love to their countless people that have loved to ill. And I had this whole thing. In all churches I have served, there have been countless people that have demonstrated true love to ill family members for years and years. Yes, it would have been more feasible and easier not to. I have witnessed parishioners who have gone to nursing homes day after day visiting loved ones who couldn't even remember if they came to visit or not, One particular man I remember went to this nursing home to see his wife every day. He would go there, and every day, which wasn't his wife at all, but because of the Alzheimer's disease that got her, she would sit there, and this pure, sweet little woman would just sit there and swear at him at the top of her lungs for half an hour to an hour. But still, he went because he loved her. I know parents who have continually loved their children, even though they knew they were making horrible and altering, life-changing choices. And all these people continue to love on, no matter what anybody said, because they believed they were called to do just that love. I can tell you of my grandmother, who at 58, my grandfather had a stroke and was paralyzed, and eventually, after another stroke, became just a 5-year-old and 5-year-old. And she kept him for 9 years in their house, a very small house, one-bedroom little place. And people said, put him in a nursing home. You don't need to do this. You don't need to suffer that. And to my grandmother's credit, I suppose, and to something I'll never forget, she just looked at him and said, but I made vows when I married this person that I would take care of them in sickness and in health, and I mean to do just that. My grandmother wasn't a big churchgoer, but somehow that impacted her life, and she remembered that. And even though my grandfather did some crazy things after her stroke when he was 5, that probably were, that I shouldn't say anything about. But anyway, she loved him, and she showed me an example of love that I was probably at that time probably not willing to take myself. My friends, I believe that if there was ever a time to display this kind of sacrificial love, it is now. We are in a frightful, loveless world. Thankfully, we still bump up against people who daily live their lives loving others despite the pain, gathering their children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings. Why do they do it? I'll tell you why they do it. While I'm sure they might not use these words, they do it because they believe God has called them to, and so they love on, loving in spite of the pain that is thrust in their face. That is who they are, and I admire them. And then there is another level of people, as I came to think. People I call our prayer warriors, people who we know we can call without hesitation, and they will pray. No matter what the hour of the day, they will pray. And I thank the people who do that. It's amazing. We also have numerous people in this congregation, when they know there is a need, they will be there. You can count on them time after time. If someone needs food, you call them up and they're there. If you need a ride, there they are. If you need to visit someone, once again, these people are Johnny on the spot. They far outdo anything that I do. They're amazing people within this congregation, and so many of them. If you need soup made and delivered, they are there. And on and on and on the list goes. There they are, and I'm grateful. And on, what can I say? Quietly serving, quietly loving, without whispering a word of discontent, because God has led them to that task. And there are people in this parish who work tirelessly for our schools, our hospitals, our clinics and agencies, and you put in the other word, noun. These marvelous people work for these agencies not because they make a fortune doing any of these things. God knows that they could make more money elsewhere, I suppose. Now they continue on toiling away because they are answering the call of love. They hear within their hearts that this is what they are to do. This is the mission that God has placed them on, and they do it. My friends, when we hear the call of God within our hearts, even a fox can't stop us. Even a fox. We will not be deterred from the mission or ministry God has called us to do. We will go on, loving as we go, because the love of God cannot be stopped by any mere mortal or any pest. And that, my friends, is the will of and power of the love of God in that age or any age. So help me God. Amen and amen.